The Israeli government has declared a state of war for the first time since 1973 as fierce fighting with Palestinian militants continues. Aerial footage has been released showing airstrikes on Hamas locations in the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian group launched a surprise attack on Israel on Saturday morning. Over 1,000 people have now been killed so far in fighting on both sides. Let's unpack the story further. We're joined this morning by Ruth Wasserman Lande, who is the former advisor to Israeli President Shimon Peres, and she joins us this morning from Tel Aviv. Ruth, it's great to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on to our program this morning. You know,
Good morning.
Good morning. A lot of the commentary in the wake of this surprise attack by Hamas is saying that this was bound to happen, that it was only a matter of time. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, I agree with that statement, given the fact that Iran is training and funding the Hamas as a proxy that it has to not forward Palestinian causes, but rather its own demands and wishes to forward its own hegemony in the region. This has been going on for many years, but much more so in the past several years. And it's really terrible to watch first and foremost. And I lived in South Africa. I know how, different it seems from the outset, from the international media. But I just want to share, somebody who's been living in Israel for over 2 decades. You know, the country is very, very, very small. Iran has been funding and training terrorists who, by the way, hold hostage their own people in poverty and in utter distress, completely differently to what is portrayed in international media, completely. And you can hear the people of Iran saying that about the Iranian regime. You can hear the people of Gaza saying it about the Hamas regime. But Iran has been funding and training Hamas in Gaza, Hamas in the north of Israel, in Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Palestinian extremists, the Islamists in the West Bank. They've infiltrated Jordan. Nobody speaks of it yet. But Jordan, the Hashemite kingdom, very important to the West, very important to stability. There are Iranian operatives in it. They are also trying to reach out to the Arab Israeli citizens with Israeli citizenship and voting ability within Israel in order to influence what is going on in Israel. And this has been going on for years and years, smuggling of weapons into all of these regions, including into Israel. And what happened on Saturday, the Sabbath, a religious day, a holiday, it was a festival, a Jewish festival when most of the people were in the synagogues, is very similar to what happened in 1973, a surprise attack. But I want to share for one moment with your audience that this wasn't just a surprise attack. This was not an attack on military. It was an infiltration into private civilian homes, families, kidnapping elderly women, 84-year-old Holocaust survivors, children, women, rapings. And this was paraded not by Israelis. This was paraded online by those Hamas operatives as something to be proud of. I cannot begin to relate the barbarism and the massacre that occurred. And when you speak about 1,000 being killed on both sides, it is not correct. It is Israeli civilians and armed military Hamas operatives that if you hear their Arabic, and this is again recorded by themselves and paraded online, they say, this woman is blonde, we will rape her. This one is ugly, we will kill her. It's all over the place. They've taken children. They've kidnapped children. I'm talking about 3-year-olds, 5 years old, separated them from their families, from their parents. It is insane.
You know, you talk about proxy wars that are being fought on the part of those who are funding Hamas. You talk about Iran fighting a proxy war for their own political means. The same could be said about the U.S. Ruth, the U.S. referring to its quote-unquote unwavering support of the U.S. for Israel's right to defend itself. The U.S. now sending military ships and aircraft. How does that play into the whole scenario, the fact that Israel has so much support? Yeah.
The huge difference between the U.S. and Iran is that the U.S. supports regional stability. So whereas it supports a democracy, and believe me, I've lived in South Africa, black people in South Africa were not permitted to vote. They could not live in the same neighborhoods. There were no members of parliament who were black people. I lived in that country. In Israel, the word apartheid is a complete and utter populism that was made up by the international media. There are Arab citizens here that are being torn apart by the rockets sent by Hamas. So Iran actually strives to find instability and to promote instability. For example, in the West Bank, it has created a war zone out of beautiful, amazing Lebanon. It has helped the Assad regime kill its own people with chemicals. It strives and it actually celebrates instability. What it is doing currently in Jordan is trying to do the same thing. It tried to do the same in Egypt. What happened in Egypt is that the regime is strong enough and kicked the Iranian operatives out. Jordan has not been strong enough to do that. Iran, as opposed to the U.S., celebrates instability, death, wrecking people's lives, not the opposite. The U.S. is promoting stability. It's not void of making mistakes. It has made numerous mistakes, and of course, so has Israel. We are not perfect, but to declare that there is a kind of a symmetry between an army shooting back after 4,500 rockets are being sent into specifically civilian populations and hurting Hamas operatives that are armed and are truly perpetrating crimes against humanity. There is no symmetry in the story. Ruth, and it pains me to say that.
Yeah. Ruth, talking of crimes against humanity, what would be your response to the fact that people living on the Gaza Strip have decried the crimes against humanity insofar as they're concerned, perpetrated by Israel?
Thank you very much for saying that. There are 2.2 million people living in Gaza. I don't know if you know the number of tens of billions of dollars that have been given to the Hamas. Qatar is a country which consistently, with the help of Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been passing funding to Hamas for years and years. Benjamin Netanyahu has been in power for almost 20 years in this country, democratically elected again and again. He has been in cohorts with Qatar, and this can be checked, you don't need to rely on my word, sending billions of dollars. Egypt is the go-between, it's the mediator of this. Where is this money? Has it been used for education? Has it been used for infrastructure? Has it been used for what? It has been used to build underground tunnels and for dual-use materials to make bombs and rockets. The people there are held hostage, and they are indeed living in terrible conditions. Not because of Israel, because their regime, I cannot even call it a government because it was not democratically elected, is cruel and is massacring its own people. Just ask someone Palestinian who is not there, who is not afraid to speak. They will tell you. There are no two narratives about this issue.
For those who are also weighing in on this latest attack, this Saturday attack by Hamas, as you say, thousands of rockets sent into Israel by Hamas in that surprise attack, Ruth. Some people saying, some analysts saying that this is in an effort to derail Israel-Saudi Arabia talks, these two countries coming together. What's your take on that?
Yes, it's very true. First of all, I set up the pro-Abraham Accords caucus in the Knesset when I was a member of parliament in the Middle Path political party, led by Benny Gantz, the former Minister of Defense. Saudi Arabia and Israel have been speaking and promoting a potential peace agreement. This has made Iran extremely uncomfortable. And the reason is because there has been an ongoing competition between Iranian regime and Saudi Arabia for regional hegemony. Also, Saudi Arabia is Sunni and also in charge of the Islamic sites Mecca and Medina. And the Iranians are seeking to actually raise their influence and impact on the region. That's why they're infiltrating every single arena that they can and trying to, on a platform which is unstable in order to gain more influence and so on. There has been ongoing competition between Iran and Saudi Arabia for decades. And this has created a huge discomfort amidst the Iranians. In fact, you don't need to believe me. You just have to take the declarations, by the way, I don't even know how to say it, shameless declarations, very clear, unapologetic by the leaders of Iran saying, no, this agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia will not happen. We will bring to the destruction of the state of Israel. There's no political gain, a specific political gain, and it has nothing to do with Palestinians. This is a game, a manipulative game by Iran to maneuver certain populations on the ground, amongst them the Palestinians as well, who are in fact the civilians among them, not those operatives that create those heinous crimes, but the civilians live poorly and suffer at the hands of Hamas, of Iran. People who live in South Lebanon, if you have them not there, but outside of their arena, they will tell you what it's like to live under Hezbollah. I don't wish it to my worst enemies.
Ruth Wasserman Lande is a former advisor to Israeli President Shimon Peres. She joins us live from Tel Aviv this morning. Ruth, thanks very much indeed for weighing in.